Hi again everybody, SMC here, back with your weekly dose of crime scene stories and makeup. If you know me in real life or if you have been watching these videos, you'll see that I look a little bit different this week. Got myself a white girl weave from a local salon that I am very pleased with. Also, my lovely niece, she went through a bit of a transformation, but reverse of mine. She raised, last time I checked, was $1,000 towards St. Baldrick's, which is a children's cancer charity, and she shaved her head. Her hair was almost 36 inches in length, untouched by hair dye, and she's donating all the hair to make wigs, and of course donating the money that she raised. I'm going to pull some of the stills from her page and hopefully add them in here so you can see what a cool thing she did, and if I can, I'm going to tag her in the video as well. So today I am doing this makeup look. I used my Alice in Wonderland palette and I thought, oh, I'm going to make like extreme eyes today, but they didn't really end up being all that extreme, so take it for what it's worth. I'm wearing some lipstick today because, again, I thought I was going to have an extreme eye, so I didn't want to have too pronounced of lips, but all in all, I really do like the look. I think I kind of nailed it. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about a touchy subject, at least, which is, racism and people in policing, I guess. So hopefully it doesn't come off in the wrong way, or I hope my message is well received by the audience for sure. As always, if you like my videos, if you like crime scene stories, or you like makeup, or both, please consider subscribing, hit that notification bell. And also, as always, by the very nature of what crime scene stories are, they may contain material that is sensitive, graphic, or disturbing in nature, and viewer discretion is highly advised. If you are having thoughts or feelings of hurting yourself or others, you need to talk to someone. Don't just post on social media. Don't just shoot a text out to someone. Actually get with someone either on the phone or face to face and talk it out. That can be a family member, a friend, someone from your neighborhood, someone from your church, if that's your thing. You need to talk it out. You can always call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That number is 1-800-273-TALK. Again, that's 1-800-273-TALK. You can look up your local police agency's non-emergency phone number, and you can call that line, or you could even call 911. It is imperative, if you are having thoughts or feelings of hurting yourself or others, that you talk to someone about those and work out whatever's going on before you possibly do something that you cannot take back and that you may regret. So, now that our standard disclaimer is out of the way, I hope you stick around while you're waiting for me to come back to put my face on. Go ahead and hit subscribe and hit that notification bell, and consider leaving a comment. I would love to hear from you guys, be able to interact a little bit more. If there is anything technique-wise, makeup-wise that you would like to learn, maybe you're struggling with, go ahead and either describe it in the comment section or link it, and I will take a look and I will try to teach it to myself, and then I will try to teach it to you in an upcoming video. So stick around for a minute and I will be right back. Thanks for hanging around. I hope you guys hit that subscribe and notification bell in the couple seconds that elapsed. I'm starting with some primer. I've already primed my eyes. I moisturized my face earlier. And now I'm just putting the face primer all over to get ready. Part of my job, I burn copies of body cam footage to be sent to the state's attorney's office. This week, I was burning one, and that was kind of the inspiration of what I wanted to talk about today. Of one of our officers was doing a traffic stop. He gets the car pulled over. He's walking up towards the driver's side. The driver's window is all the way down, and the driver has both of his hands out the window as the officer's approaching, and during the initial part of the interaction. The driver was young. You could see when he handed over his driver's license, it was one of the under 21 because it was sideways. The picture and everything was like long ways instead of horizontal, how it usually would be. He was very cooperative, and when the officer said, "Do you have your registration?" he asked for permission to reach over to the glove box, and then the officer quickly corrected and said, "Well, do you have any weapons or anything in the car?" "No, sir, no, I don't." "Can I reach over here for the registration?" Officer said yes, and the guy is reaching over, and then he kind of starts apologizing for being... He's apologizing for his actions of maybe the hands out the window and the asking for permission. But he's like, you just never know. And the officer says, "Yeah, these are crazy times." And as I'm watching this, and this officer, he's probably, if not the youngest, one of the youngest we even have. He's not tall. He's shorter than I am. And he's slender, so he's not an imposing individual. Now, this traffic stop happened at night. It was dark completely. So the driver, he only knows that he's been pulled over by a cop because, red and blue lights behind him. And just purely because of this driver's demographic, he is having to interact with this officer in a way that's completely foreign to how I interact with officers whenever I've been pulled over. And I've been pulled over long before I ever had a degree in forensics, long before I ever worked with police. And I never felt I needed to stick my hands out the window to show I didn't have a weapon, or when they asked me for my paperwork, asked for permission to reach to grab it from my glove box. It makes me very sad that now the times are such that an entire demographic has to very much tailor their interactions with law enforcement and for fear of their life. And just because a few terrible officers have chosen to kill people made the decisions that ended up leading to somebody's loss of life, but now this entire generation, just based on the way they look, have to be afraid of an interaction with a police officer. I don't think that it's right. I wish that it wasn't like that, because I know the majority of police officers that I've been around and that I know, even way back, working in a real good old boy agency, they weren't just sitting around talking about how racist they are or how superior because they're white or whatever. So from seeing it from the inside, there's locker room talk or, things that wouldn't be acceptable in most workplaces, but mainly that's anti-woman. I don't think I've ever actually heard an officer say anything racist, which to me is the right way it's supposed to be, and not necessarily a surprise. I feel like the ones that would target or maybe even kill someone of a different race other than white I hope they're the minority. And maybe not even to say minority might be too big of a population group. I hope that they're the real outliers, not even the minority. I know that, for lack of a better term, systemic racism and you can see here, I'm trying to use this Alice in Wonderland palette again, and so I'm doing something kind of Instagrammy or a little too extreme for just daily life. But once again, I didn't cheat. I only looked the one time a few weeks ago, so I'm not really sure what color scheme to go with. But back to systemic racism, I know it's a real thing, and I can't really think. My phone just got ganked by a little sweet pea. And I can't think of a better term to call it, so that's why I'm going to call it systemic racism. Obviously, I've never been a victim of it. Maybe I've been a victim of systemic sexism, but that's a different subject for a whole nother video. I remember years ago, I went to a scene where there were 2 dead, 2 more likely to die. They were being transported to the hospital, but they were not expected to survive even the transport to the hospital. So a total of 4 homicide victims at this scene. And the way it went down was, then these were 4 men. The 4 men were in an apartment complex. One of the men lived in one of the buildings, and they were at a different apartment building getting ready to go out. Just hanging out, being buddies, whatever. Somebody shows up where the 4 men are and says, "Hey, somebody's breaking into your house. They're robbing you." So the 4 guys go down, they get in a car, and they drive across the apartment complex. The one guy who lived in the other building and one of the 4 go upstairs to the apartment, and there are possibly 2 subjects in there trying to steal his stuff, I guess. The 2 subjects start beating up the resident subject. It really looked like there was significant ransacking, but there was a lot of blood around. Like, it really looked like this guy got beaten up badly. I don't know if the second individual who went upstairs with him also was getting beat up, or was he just watching? But this fight ensues, and I guess the resident guy, he's like, "I've had enough of this. I'm gonna get out of here." Him and the other friend run away. I think they split up as they were exiting the building, and one went one way around and one went the other way around. The 2 suspects had chased them out and ran around the building, run into the resident, shoot him, kill him on the spot. They get to the other guy, kill him. The 2 other friends who were getting ready to go out, they had stayed by the car. They are also shot. And those were the 2 that were being transported to the hospital. But I don't know if they made it. I know when I arrived at the scene, the prognosis was not good, and they did not think they would even make it to the hospital, let alone survive their injuries. When I arrived, I was tasked with searching the resident, who's deceased now, apartment for guns and drugs. Yes, we do look for stuff like that, even in the home of a decedent, because if there's drugs, we need to get those collected so they're not left there. Guns, they could be illegal. At the very least, we would need to ascertain, are these legal weapons? Who owns them? If it was the decedent's weapon, we would probably need to take it in for safekeeping until someone who was eligible, like a family member, next of kin, or so on, could come and take those from safekeeping. Because you can't just leave a gun laying around, especially in an environment like that where people are going to know something happened there. They're going to know that the person who lived in that apartment was killed, so maybe they might break in and try to steal a gun or steal whatever that's inside. So things like that you do need to look for, because you do need to collect those, at least to keep them from ending up in somebody else's hands. But it was also, this guy is deceased. We're not going to throw his corpse in jail if we find a big bunch of drugs. The worst part was that there had been one crime scene investigator working that scene all night long. It's a quadruple homicide, potentially, with only one investigator. That is mind-blowing to me. And that person didn't get relief until the next day when more people came on shift. I mean, I only a very small homicide scene would I want to work by myself. Like maybe if it was a homicide that was confined to a hotel room or a small house, would I feel comfortable being like, oh, I'm okay with working this alone? Pretty much anything bigger than that, I'm going to want another investigator there. I'm going to want a second investigator for the purposes of testimony in court. I'm going to want a second investigator there for the purposes of making sure that everything was executed with 100% accuracy and precision when it came to the investigation. Because a homicide case, that's the worst possible type of offense a human can commit on another human, and a mistake with forensics can cost that case, and that suspect can get away with it. We have the O.J. Simpson case. That's a wonderful example of when forensics can let someone get away with murdering two people. JonBenet Ramsey, that's another one where the policing and forensics led to nobody being charged. So a 6-year-old girl gets brutally killed and nobody is ever required to pay the price for that. So it's very important that as a crime scene investigator, I'm doing my job right every single time. No excuses, no, oh, I'm exhausted, or yeah, I've had all this overtime all week. That's why I made a mistake. That doesn't fly. Not for a homicide, not for a home burglary, not for a car break-in. You cannot make an excuse for sloppy work. This is the one field where I think perfection is just absolutely required of you and expected of you, and there really is no excuse for making a mistake. So I would want to have another investigator, and with 4 bodies, I would want to have multiple additional investigators there. That way we are ensuring there is no mistake. So that case had been worked, like I said, with just the one investigator the whole evening. And the 2 suspects did what they did, got into a car, drove away. Probably they were local, and just having learned about crime and what the types of people who commit crimes like these, they probably just went down the road to wherever they lived, and now they were still in the vicinity, and they could definitely do something like that again, and probably would. Fast forward a few weeks, and there's another homicide. This one with a sexual assault attached. This was just one victim. And everybody from the crime scene unit was called out to be there. There were so many people there. There was top brass there. There was so much response to this victim. Again, it was mind-blowing, the response. They had the entire crime scene unit there. They're collecting trace evidence. They are exhausting every possible forensic avenue in the investigation of this case. And this, remember, was only one decedent. So we had 4 times as many people who were killed not that long before it. And the way their response was. The only difference between this, the second victim was a female and she was white. The first 4 were males and they were black. And I don't believe that's right. I truly hope I am in the majority of investigators who would find that reprehensible. And the way I personally operate, and having seen that, let me backpedal a little bit, having seen that difference in response, I vowed to myself at that time that if I ever were to approach a case differently or with less investigative vigor due to the color or the occupation or the criminal background of the victim, that day I would just need to draft my resignation letter and find a new career. I treat every single victim with the same amount of care, and every single scene with the same amount of care. It doesn't have to be a homicide to get top-notch treatment from me. I treat car break-ins the same because there is a victim associated to these crimes, and they are really, it could be the worst thing that ever happened to them in their entire life. It's not up to me, and based on my background and the things that I've seen, to make a call about how that person should be reacting to this incidence of crime that has been committed against them. When it comes to homicides, the resident one who was killed, of the 4, he had young children, and maybe he still had living parents. So there were people who were feeling an extreme and profound loss at the murder of this guy. So it wasn't up to us to just feel like, oh, well, he's just some low-level drug dealer, so this is a drug thing, or this is a gang thing. Like, we shouldn't take it so seriously, because it's just, what happens? That's the cost of doing business when you live in the criminal world. That's not the right way to approach these investigations, and that doesn't bring justice or closure to those young children who lost their father, or to maybe his living parents who lost their child. That I've always decided to take a very victim-first approach in the execution of my duties, and I've been successful at it. This also stems from my own mother. Her house was broken into and all her jewelry was taken. And the response, the officer who showed up, she said he was older and he really didn't seem to care. And it made my mom feel like shit. So even at a burglary, I've always taken that, where the re-victimization of my mother, with me to those scenes, because I know those victims, they feel terrible. And if I show up and I'm having an off day, or I'm exhausted, or this is my 8th or 9th day in a row of working, and I'm just throwing some powder around and I'm sort of flip about it, oh, I've been to 5 of these already today, that victim feels like, wow, this investigator doesn't give a shit about my case. The police don't care about what's happened to me. So why are they going to even have the warm and fuzzies about their local law enforcement and that response? Because if I show up and I don't care, they just automatically label the entire organization as uncaring and unwilling to do their job. That's not the impression I want to give for the agency that I work for. It's also not the impression personally that I want to give to any individual about my professionalism. I want them to know I've done everything I could possibly do, and I also want them to understand when I articulate why I couldn't do something, especially something maybe that they saw on TV, why I couldn't complete that for them, or why I couldn't find any fingerprints. And I want to have them feel comfortable with, I've done everything I could possibly do for them and their case. And I'm going to pass along all that information I gathered from investigating their scene to the detective or to the officer, and the officer or detective is going to be able to handle it from there. I've been very successful at my job in approaching it in that manner. I've had countless victims tell me and thank me for the thorough work that I did for them. So I know personally that I am doing the goal that I set out to do. I would love to hear if you guys have ever been the victim of systemic racism, or even felt the benefit. Maybe you're, middle-aged white male and you've reaped the rewards of being that race and age. Maybe you didn't get harassed by the police when you should have. Please share your stories down below, because I would love to hear other perspectives. I work with a gentleman now who is a longtime officer. That's all he's ever done. He didn't, he went to college and then he became a cop. He's worked for several different agencies. He's worked in different states. He is black, and he has definitely been treated differently he has been pulled over, and then he's treated one way as a black male being pulled over, and then when he gets the opportunity, or if he gets the opportunity to say he's law enforcement, then all of a sudden it's, oh, why didn't you say so, brother, blah, blah, blah. Like, this would have been going totally different. And it's like, well, the reason I didn't say so is because I shouldn't have to say so. It shouldn't go totally different now that you know I'm one of you. It should go totally different because every interaction with the public should be totally different. That they automatically were treating him one way because he's a black male, but then once they figure out he's safe, then all of a sudden it's buddy-buddy. And he knows that's not right, which is why he doesn't just broadcast it right away. Because I think he wants that officer to know and to feel that little bit of shame and that little bit of eating crow, hopefully, that he does, or she does if it was a female, at drastically changing her interaction with the citizen of the public based upon their profession. I mean, all police officers should be approaching these risky interactions with a little bit of care, but it just shouldn't matter white, black, brown, whatever, because there's tons of white criminals, there's tons of violent white criminals that could easily flip out and attack a police officer. I've known a lot of white or otherwise non-black individuals growing up who hated police officers. And they hated police officers because of their criminal endeavors. And, you know, that's the lifestyle they were choosing at the time. And they didn't want to deal with any cops purely because of, you know, if I'm dealing with a cop, that means I'm getting busted. And that mentality, it wasn't because they were black or because they were whatever. It was because they were criminals. And criminal activity is definitely equal opportunity. That, you know, anybody can be a criminal and anybody can be a violent criminal, male, female, black, white, brown. And these police officers have to approach all individuals with that potential until they can begin the interaction and then feel at ease and know, oh, well, this person, they really were just speeding, or they really did just have an expired tag on their car. And once they can feel that ease, let their guard down a little bit. I truly hope that I am in the majority of the way that I think about how I do my job, and that I believe just having a preconceived notion about someone because of their skin color or because of their criminal history or profession, that I'm going to treat this case differently. Anybody can become a victim of a crime, no matter what they choose to do or what kind of criminal activity they've been in, and we have to treat them all the same. In my experience, that has been the truth, that I am the majority, and the way that I think is the majority. That one story that I told you illustrates a time where, and that was all the cogs in the wheel making the decisions. So that was a rarity. I've been on numerous other homicide scenes where it didn't matter the color of the victim or if they were a drug dealer or a gangbanger. It was investigated as thoroughly as humanly possible. Well, my eyes are not getting as extreme as I thought they might, but I guess that's probably good. I'm trying to put something really light here in the corner. I'm also going to try to not use eyeliner, and I'm going to line my lower lash line with one of these darker colors, and I'm going to bring it up still following the angle of the lower lash line to make a little bit of a wing. We'll try this dark color right here. Sometimes I try to fill in the wing on the top, sometimes I don't. We'll see how it goes today. I just start about directly under the iris, so it only goes about halfway. And then just lightly drag . So here is where you would fill in the wing a little. To the top. Thanks. I'm going to set that aside for a second. I noticed on there that the recording had stopped automatically, so I took that opportunity to refill the coffee and then get back to you. I'm probably going to end up racing through the rest of my face and just doing that fast forward time mapping on the video because I talked for quite some time. I don't feel like I have to tell you guys again how to do the contouring because that's been 2 weeks now, maybe even 3, where I have discussed it. So you're really not missing anything. I'm still doing it the exact same way as I've been doing it. If you guys have any things you would like for me to discuss, questions, comments, please put that down in the comments below. I will either answer them directly in the comment section or most preferably I will answer them in an upcoming video. So please, 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 if there's something you want to know. I know one of these days I will do a video about what you should actually study in school if you want to do this for a living. Whenever I do presentations in schools, especially for like high schoolers, they always ask me if I've shot someone. I'll just answer that for you guys all right now. No, I'm not a sworn police officer. I don't carry a gun. I've never shot anybody. Not professionally or just for the fun of it. So you don't have to ask me that one. I still am really liking this eyebrow kit. I feel like I'm doing a little bit better with putting more of an arch than I actually have. And then of course the gel that I almost always seem to get all over my face, but I have a Q-tip right here that I can clean it up with. I don't have very much volume when it comes to actual eyebrows, so I like to make sure the gel really gets in there. And then I just let them hang out. Usually when I'm doing my face, the face brush will end up putting them back in place, but that's one of the last things I do is actually use the little brush and brush them into place if there's still any hairs that are sticking out all wild. I am trying to extend them down a little bit further, because of being extreme with the eye. One thing I have been doing that I will slow down and tell you guys about, of course, I do have some dark coloration, dark circles because I'm perpetually exhausted, but the dark discoloration tends to be right here in this area, and that's where I concentrate most of my concealer. But my eyes are a little bit puffy underneath, and that's why I've just put a few little dots here kind of in the trough of where the puffiness meets my face, because that, once it's blended in, is going to give the impression to the viewer that that is lifting out. And the same philosophy is highlighting while you contour. And so that's the reasoning for these little dots. I've also started, especially when my eye is a little bit more extreme, I put a few little dots along this edge, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it in and down and out. I'm going to keep it a short distance from, but parallel to that wing, and that's going to give me a nice clean line and of that eyeshadow. So the color goes color, 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 and then a solid, nice, sharp break getting into the face. And then I just blend this in. You know, I don't need to blend it all over because I'm just trying to hide the discoloration that's really right there. And a little bit on the puffy part. And then here, I want to keep it in that trough because I want to lighten that up, and it creates the illusion that it's higher than it is, therefore reducing the visibility of the puffiness. You can't really see, but trust me, it works. So if you've got puffy eyes, try it and you will be pleasantly surprised. The reason that it works is because this concealer is relatively light. If I was using concealer that was exactly the same shade as my skin, it's not necessarily going to work. It does need to be a tiny bit lighter because the lightness of the color is what is the illusion of it coming forward or sticking out and catching more light. Just like how putting highlighter right here gives the impression that this cheekbone is sticking out further, and therefore the light is hitting it naturally. I make sure to blend the discoloration and the trough part first before I go out here, because I don't want to get any of this shadow pigment on the brush and then put it here. Since I'm trying to cover up some darkness, the last thing I need is to put some pigment here. And that's why I leave this. And then I just gently, and remember, you want to be a short distance from but parallel to that wing, and you're going to want to take it as far as it'll go. And that causes there to be a nice little fade in the concealer. You don't want to take it up too high into the eye, or you're going to start messing with your shadow that you just worked on. And here you can bring it down to make sure it blends well. And then do the same thing on this other side. A short distance from and parallel to your wing, and just straight on up as far as the product allows you to go. And then you can bring, I see a little dark speck there I'm trying to get. You can bring it down a little bit. Now you can see there is a nice delineation between the shadow and the rest of my face. Now I will go about the rest of my face in fast forward motion. Now for something completely different. I found the closest thing I had to a nude lipstick that I'm gonna wear because I was planning to go like crazy with the eyes and therefore wouldn't want to have really much of a lip. It's a bit more coral than nude for me, but it works. It is a liquid matte lipstick, and I'm putting it on very sparingly, and then just kind of spreading it around. Having a nice greasy lip balm on initially helps. I want it to last, but I also don't want it to become cakey like they always do. And there we go. Hopefully you enjoyed my story today and my makeup. If you did, please consider subscribing. If you want to hear other types of stories or you have some questions, feel free to add them in the comment section below, and I will answer you directly and possibly put it into an upcoming video. If you have any ideas makeup-wise that you would like for me to try, or techniques that you really want to learn, but you're having trouble learning it from maybe other beauty gurus, Instagrammers, whatever, if you can explain the technique, I will definitely try to learn it and demonstrate it for you. If not, just go ahead and tag or link the video or the technique and I will check it out. And again, I'll try to dissect it and then deliver it to you in a way that makes sense for a normal person who's not a professional makeup artist or a professional Instagrammer, so on and so forth. But yep, like I said, if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and I will see you next week. Bye.